Hello folks, Brandon Chapman with you today. It's the TheoTrade video for October 25th, 2021. The market screams the new highs today. Of course, Tesla, Facebook, big names that are in the news today. We'll talk about those and others. They're experiencing some usual option activity following our market discussion. As you look at the S&P 500, the ES futures, again, trading through last week's high. Again, I mean, the leadership, if we look at the watch list here of sectors, you'll see as far as the best sector, the top performing sectors, cyclicals, followed by energy. We've got materials in the mix. And of course, we're seeing XLU kind of take up the end as they had a very strong week last week. So as we think about the sectors, this is definitely a much more bullish posturing that we're seeing here with much more cyclical names really leading out today in the broader market. As you look at, for example, the S&P 100, and you see, well, which companies are kind of leading out in this? We know the sectors. Are there any individual names that are kind of really moving higher? You notice Tesla's, of course, on that list, topping $1 trillion today. It is becoming the first $1 trillion junk-rated company out there, according to, I believe, Bloomberg. Again, or is it Reuters? Which one was it? According to Bloomberg, they're the first $1 trillion junk-rated bond company. Very interesting. We can trade at such a high valuation, dwarfing that of Ford and GM. Of course, as we look at the price of Tesla here, it took out that pivotal $900. And of course, the news today was potentially selling 100,000 vehicles to Hertz. It's that bankrupt company that now wants to buy a bunch of Teslas. And the question is with Tesla, a company that's really, has waiting lists, that's had trouble delivering, right? That's been a little bit better, I guess, of late. It makes you wonder why they're just going to sell 100,000 vehicles to Hertz at a discount. Is this kind of an indication of, is this the blow off top in Tesla? It's interesting to kind of think of that. We've been kind of focusing on 900 level when it broke on Friday. The indication was we're maybe heading higher, and the earnings did nothing to dissuade that. And in fact, if you look at some of the news last week as well on deliveries and stuff like that, I mean, certainly things have been looking up for the company, and we're really seeing that push today as we took out the $900 mark. Again, this may take a lot of future value and pull it forward based on the news today, but at least for today, it's higher, 12%, now surpassing Facebook as I think the fifth largest company out there. So very interesting news today with Tesla. Big movement. This may be a time to look to try to fade it, particularly if we see maybe another bigger update or two in Tesla. Now, as we kind of circle back to our list, you'll notice Exxon in here, Biogenetic, NVIDIA, Target. Target is one that, it's had some good option activity. I'm thinking TJ. Target did have a couple weeks ago here, but TJX is the one I was thinking of that's had some good option activity here over the last couple of weeks. Starting to see a little bit of a breakout today. But Target is one that was really kind of one of the top performers this week today in the S&P 100, up 1.73%. Costco, and then you see Disney in here. Now, Disney gets interesting. We're going to circle back to Facebook here in just a moment, but Disney is up 1.5%. Now, we look at the positioning at Disney, right? Of course, they call them the cast members, the people that work at Disneyland. And we've got this cast, right? The stars of today's show is Tesla, it's Facebook, but here we have a supporting cast member and others that are showing some bullish indications. Now, Disney's coming off a very significant level of support today on about average volume. However, when we kind of dig in a little deeper, we got the weekly options. On the NOV, the 29 Oct, 172.50 calls, 19,000 contracts. You see it's kind of spilling out here to 175. But these 172.50s mostly bought, and it wasn't just for 29 October. It's also next week's expiration, which for me gives it much more of an indication. Maybe we have a little bit more momentum out of this. And you notice it's the 180 strike, 13,500 bought against 3,600 open interest. We know this is opening activity. Again, as you dig deeper, you'll see it's more buy-side activity, and we're looking at potentially 180. Now, as you look at the technicals here on Disney, we're finding support at a significant support level. 180 just happens to be towards the top side of this range. So it's not a terrible setup here. Maybe it's an out spread or maybe a long call targeting 180 or possibly even just buying stock, for example. But again, nice little swing trade setup, maybe a pre-earnings run and anticipate maybe the earnings do come out better. So maybe look for this moving ahead of the earnings and probably look to close it beforehand, and then we'll kind of reevaluate at that point. Now let's look at other companies, Lowe's, Home Depot. These companies are literally just running away with it right now. They're continuing to churn higher. Very similar we saw to last March. You wonder how much this has left, and we've got earnings coming up on November 16th, which could be a very significant catalyst for maybe seeing a bit of a retracement here. So watch the Home Depot, watch Lowe's. They've been really on a tear of late. Lowe's, for example, got some nice activity a couple weeks ago. It's really kind of translated into some bullish movement, and it's definitely moving well beyond probably what you would have anticipated back then. Now let's circle back to Facebook. Facebook is such that, it gapped down last week. We're kind of testing support. They came up with earnings after hours. So yeah, we get this kind of engulfing formation over the last couple of days, long-legged spinning top, but going into an earnings, there's so much uncertainty as to what that number was going to be and whether it's going to beat. If we look at here, 322, it does surpass analyst estimates. Now, I did pull some numbers before the earnings here that I'm going to share with you. It's from Yahoo. But when we look at the expectation average estimate here, 319, we know they came at 322. The range of estimates, 268 to 352. What you're seeing here is there's a fair bit of divergence here, right? There's a fair bit of range between what they're expecting Facebook to earn, not just in the current quarter, but next year, next quarter, current year, and next year. It only begins to widen out as the uncertainty over advertising and other things really start to play out. You'll notice in 2021, the company projected to take in a 39% increase in sales, expected to slow next year at 19.5%. So as you break apart today's earnings in Facebook, these are some things to look at. It's the forward-looking statements that you got to focus on. The company's done a great job of beating expectations, and the company's been rewarded by higher estimates. So you look at the EPS trend here for the last 90 days, from 13.13 to 14.13. And again, you can start to look at what the guidance is, and you compare it against what? Just compare it against here. You know what the range of expectations are. 12.99 to 15.23. Next quarter, 3.40 to 4.67. Where does it come out in that range? And then as you start to come down, you look at the next 5 years projected at 28% growth, which is phenomenal, but it is well below the 42% of the past 5 years. So again, really focus on and watch. Did Facebook ultimately positively revise upward expectations, or did they lower them? Because we know they beat on the bottom line adjusted EPS number. Let's look at it intraday here. So we'll go to a 1 day, 1 minute chart. And you notice this kind of whipsaw we're seeing right now, the range from basically 314.5 up to a high of about 340. That may set the tone for the overnight trading. Usually I like to take a look at the first half hour. But again, we'll see. They've got the conference call coming up later as well. Could create some significant movement, but you'll notice something, right? As we go back to the daily chart, where are we gapping to? 336. That's not exactly even closing the gap here. Well, we're pretty close to closing the gap. So again, it looks like it might be relatively positive. So again, oftentimes what happens when you get that pre-earnings selling, if the earnings come out positive, generally speaking, you'll make up that pre-earnings sell-off as people are selling in anticipation of maybe poor earnings. Looks like we might have a chance of gapping up towards 340 tomorrow. And of course, looking at the live news, we don't have time to break it down here in such a short video, but you can start to look at the guidance specifically for Facebook. Now let's turn our attention to some other names here. Again, we're seeing Facebook not going to necessarily, doesn't look like we're going to disappoint heavily. That may put a lot of pressure on the market tomorrow. Maybe we see another all-time high. However, there are a number of names aside from Disney, Tesla, and Facebook that are vying to be members of the cast. And in this case, we're looking to look at 3D. 3D was really interesting. We're looking at this during my session. We saw the activity come in using an unusual option activity scan that I do daily, and I end up updating a spreadsheet on our site. But anyways, we look at 3D. As we look at it intraday, so we're going to go 1 day, 1 minute, but you'll notice right here, right around 11:50, this is my time, but anyway, you'll see a lot of volume step into 3D systems. A little bit of selling on the close right here, but again, you saw a nice little pop, secondary reaction here. what was being traded coincidentally with that? It was the 5 November 32 strikes. We're talking about an out-of-the-money option being bought that's creating movement coincidentally with the price. So as this began to pick up just before 12 o'clock Mountain Time, you'll notice again, as the option activity is kicking in, the option price is going up, the stock price is going up. This is what we call gamma, right? The option activity driving the stock activity. Maybe it's market makers having to hedge, that sort of thing. But again, significant activity, not just for this week, but for next week. In total, about 17,000 contracts toward the close, mostly bought on 3D. So very interesting. So what are we looking at on 3D? We go back to a one-year chart. We're talking about what? As you go back, we're looking at the 32 strikes. We're looking at a near-term bounce towards about 32, which is that prior resistance. But again, the amount of bullishness that kind of came in, maybe have more upside here. But at the minimum, today's move may have more legs, at least about 32, maybe 33, back to the prior high here. Another stock today was MQ. MQ, this is Marqeta. Marqeta received some positive news as a result of Uber. They're partnering with them for faster payments and rewards. You'll notice today we kind of open up very similar to Friday's close, and we rally and we close above the prior several day range. It's not exactly an engulfing candle here. It's kind of like a stick sandwich of some sorts. But again, one to watch. We have the earnings coming up on the 10th, and the activity today ended up falling on the November expiration. There's not a weeklies in here. Liquidity is just okay, but it really kind of centered out here on the 30 and 35 strikes. And again, mostly buying activity, bullish indication, plus the bullish movement today that was sparked as a result of that activity. And again, if you want to dig deeper, you can always go to the chart and take a look at it and see how it influenced the price as that activity or interest began to come in. You'll see it kind of dusted up around just before 12 o'clock. And you notice right here, for example, 12 o'clock, that big spike in the price, big volume, coincidentally with a lot of option activity occurring at that specific time. Again, a lot of coincident, we're talking gamma here, movement in the price. Finally, a stock I focused on last week in one of my sessions, there was not only unusual option activity on it, but we're doing an evaluation search on Wednesday and kind of talked about this kind of blend of growth and value, but companies that are in the metals space. Vale has earnings coming up here next week. As we look here, actually, is it this week? Yeah, no, it's 10/28. It's this week. Vale is a steel company. There's also Cliffs. Vale is a much better company, a much better value. However, Cliffs has been outperforming. We saw the price setting up. We had an unusual option activity on the 21st. That was right before the earnings. The earnings came out. We blew higher and we continued higher as the activity kicked back in from a weekly 29 October expiration. The $25 strike price, that began to move in expiration. Our target last week was kind of retesting the prior highs up here. We're getting really, really close to that, and we may yet get there. Finally, we're going to look at another cast member. It's a roll. This is a bullish option roll leading into the earnings on the 2nd. This is ATVI. It's Activision Blizzard. And as we look at the trade tab here on Activision Blizzard, we're looking at a call roll for the December expiration. So in essence, we're closing out the 80s. We're buying the 85s. What this is doing, in part, taking profits. But the second thing is reaffirming the move and looking at the price potentially moving towards 85 or higher right ahead of the earnings announcement. So again, maybe we get this pre-earnings run towards 85 before the earnings next week on November 2nd. Again, tomorrow we've got a lot of earnings coming up. We got Google, for example, big name on the docket. Again, this is going to be a big week for technology and, of course, for the market, as well as big market cap names are set to announce. Anyway, it's a pleasure being with you folks today. Have a great one. We'll see you back next week. Thank you.